Welcome to Friday. Welcome to Friday. Hopefully you guys out on the East Coast enjoying your lunch. Maybe you're eating outside, watching us on your phone because it's a gorgeous day out here on the East Coast. Beautiful fall afternoon. The weather has turned a little bit cooler, a little crisp in the air. Autumn is here, and it's a great time to be watching football, to be betting on football, and to be enjoying football. So glad to see you guys here. As a reminder, you can follow us over on YouTube. We have the show, the Sharp Football Analysis channel is over there, and you can be following us there. Please go and you can check out all of our content over at YouTube. You can like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and you can interact with us on the chat. That's one of the best things about this. We'll be popping up some of your messages throughout the show, some of the comments and feedback that you have for us, and we'll be digging into some of your questions as well throughout. So looking forward to having all of you guys participating in this interactive show with us here on Friday afternoon. Really excited about it. True in lunch. Oh, there you go. Gerald is eating lunch in upstate New York. I bet the leaves are beautiful this time of year. It's just a great time of year. If you can't feel alive in the fall, I don't know what you're doing. Hold on. Let me hop down here, turn off some of the buzzers on my devices, which I forgot to do. And let's get started here. The first thing that we have to discuss, obviously, we are going to dig into some of our best bets. We got Ryan McCrystal's college best bets. We've got Pam Maldonado's NFL best bets. We've got my longest prop best bets. But before we dig into some of these, we're going to hit on a couple of quick topics. And one of the ones that I've got to address first and foremost is the way that the officiating is occurring this year is different than in prior years, not just because there's an increase in incompetence, it seems, as we saw witnessed by the penalty last night, but also the way that the NFL then goes back and tries to officiate the game and the fines via fining the players and attacking their pocketbooks more so, and rather than actually calling plays, calling flags, throwing flags on plays that occur. So first of all, if you guys did not watch the game, you had to stay up late, is the very end of the game last night. Matt, real quick, why don't you cue up this last play of the game that mattered? It was when we saw going up against the LA Rams, we saw the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold drop back in the end zone and try to pass the ball. They needed to come back very quickly. They were down by 8 points. They needed a touchdown and 2-point conversion. But we saw, pay attention to the official standing here, watching the defensive player. His lone assignment on these plays, the head official, is to be watching that quarterback. What is happening there with the quarterback? And indeed, he is staring directly at the quarterback. You can see the white hat staring directly at the quarterback as the quarterback, Sam Darnold's head spins around poltergeist style. The only one way that could happen when he's not moving his head himself is if the defensive player is grabbing onto the face mask. And you could put two and two together, even if you couldn't quite clearly see the fingers in the face mask. And you should have been able to do that. But at any rate, there is no flag thrown on this. And instead, they call a safety, which means a clean tackle by the defensive player on the quarterback. Matt, why don't you roll that?
His head go back with his pressure. Remember we said the left side is where this pressure is going to come from. Fisk takes the tackle. Young works through, and he got a hold of something there. Let's see. Yeah, he got that face mask. He sure did. Yep.
So clearly that was a blown call, right? It obviously had an impact on the result of the game because it did not allow the Minnesota Vikings to try to go down the field and tie the game. Now, the right side did cover the spread. Obviously, the LA Rams, in my opinion, were the right side in that game, and they covered the spread. But that doesn't alleviate the fact that this is a bad look for the officials. Afterwards, he came out and said, we didn't see it, so we couldn't call it, as if that was a good excuse, when in fact your job is to see it. And so you failed miserably at your job because it was clear as day to everybody involved. Now we're going to talk to Joe, our ref analyst, at the end of the show to discuss ways that the NFL could potentially step in real time and figure out a way to make this right. That's the biggest issue that we have with these types of penalties, is that they're not made correct. They are not made right in real time. If we see them in real time, if they're being replayed on its broadcast, and we can see that there is something amiss here, that should get corrected before that next snap. Now, if they come back, 3 plays later and identify something, that's one thing. But if we're clearly able to see it before that next snap occurs, let's get the call correct. Let's stop screwing around here. Let's get the call correct by whatever means necessary, so that we can keep playing the game in the manner that it should be played. But what I think a lot of people then afterwards, Tom Pelissero of the NFL came out and tweeted that this is a great play by the defensive player, although he will incur a fine as a result of this. But it was a great play that he had. It saved the game for the Rams. And I quote tweeted that, and I said, Tom is absolutely correct that the NFL, like it or not, they are going to come back and fine the player for that face mask. But it obviously is not going to have an impact in the result of the game. It's not, and it was not a penalty. And a lot of you guys, maybe not you directly, but a lot of you guys came into my mentions on that tweet and said, what do you mean? Why are they fining for a face mask? And so what I want to do is I want to share and open up the lid on this, the way that the NFL is fining these players and what they're doing. So Matt, if you can pull up the fine graphic. I don't know that you guys realize this, but let me walk through this. There have been 164 player fines issued through week 6, totaling nearly $2 million in fines for the players. No, not doing something off the field. No, not wearing the incorrect socks. No, not putting tape on their face mask. No, not wearing the right uniform. For actually playing the game of football, they are getting fined for various different things. Now, I don't know if you realize this. So look at this first category of infractions, the unnecessary roughness. Look at that face mask. There have been 23 different fines for face masking, totaling over $200,000. There have been a total of unnecessary roughness fines of 105 of these fines. Now, what I want to point out to you is the number that I added. Now, I built this spreadsheet. I came up with all this stuff last night when some of you guys didn't realize this was going on. What I want you to realize is, look at that column off to the far right. It says flagged in games. There have only been 55 unnecessary roughness penalties issued this year, flags thrown for unnecessary roughness. Yet almost double that has been fined by the NFL. And what they do is they go back a week after the games on a Saturday during college football. So it's a weekend, people aren't paying attention, and it's during college football, and they issue these fines. So they're sweeping it under the rug. They're fining players for various different things, such as leg whips, such as a late hit, such as a low block, such as a face mask. Okay. It is an absolute joke. Here's a couple great examples. The hip drop tackle. They wanted to come out and get this out of the game. We just saw the hip drop tackle take Chris Godwin, put him on IR, break his ankle, dislocate the ankle, and that's costing him tons of time and a long recovery. Did they throw a penalty on that play? No, but they came out today and said that that was actually a penalty. It should have been a penalty for a hip drop. It met the criteria for a hip drop tackle. And so now they're going to fine the guy. But how are they getting this out of the game if they're not actually calling penalties? They're just coming back after the fact and fining these players. They're fining players. I'm going to show a replay in a second for face masks that don't get called in the games, but they just come back later and fine them. They fine, remember, if you guys were watching football back, maybe it was 2020, 2021, I think it was 2020, where they came out with this lowering your helmet to initiate contact with the crown of your helmet. And they wanted to get that out of the game. They wanted guys to tackle properly. So they came up with this unnecessary roughness penalty for use of helmet. Do they ever call that? Basically, no, they never call that. And yet you can see here that there's been a total of 19 different fines that have been levied so far this year through week 6 based upon use of the helmet. And I've got the tape because I know exactly when every single one of these fines, the plays that the fines were levied for, I went back and looked, and most of these don't have penalties at all. Almost 90% of those use of helmet ones that I checked do not have a penalty associated with it. It is just they go back and look at the tape and they decide to fine the player. If they're doing this, they need to call a penalty during the game. If it's not worthy of being called a penalty during the game, the NFL coming back and levying these fines is absolutely absurd. We've got this unsportsmanlike conduct down here where we've got the gestures, different taunts. Most of these aren't fined at all. I understand this violent gesture where the guys are trying to use the guns, the finger guns and stuff. They're trying to get that out of the game. There's been 12 such fines for those. But you've got all these taunting fines, 18 of these different penalties. The league is hardly throwing flags on these in real time. I've got a couple of them that are just so absurd. I had to go back and watch the all 22 late last night to try to identify where some of these fines were. Just absolutely ridiculous. And look at the unsportsmanlike penalties. There have been 17 unsportsmanlike penalties through week 6, but 40 different fines for these penalties. So it's absurd the way that they are fining these. Now, Matt, let's go to the video. I want you to watch a video from a week 6 play where this was not called face masking, and the guy got fined, I want to say either $9,000 or $14,000 after the fact for this face mask, which was not called during the game. Why don't you roll that, Matt?
Second half, May on 1st and 10. And Gibson was there. Mario Edwards corrals him, gain of a yard, and put him at the 22.
Well, Jacobs gets beat quickly to the inside, and that's what allows this to happen. But watch the face mask that's missed by the officials.
Significant.
I don't know how you missed that. I mean, the helmet completely turned, the head turned all the way around. But a no call.
You see that? Ripped his head almost clear off, Antonio Gibson. The crowd saw it on the replay. Everybody in the stadium clearly saw it on the replay. The announcer saw it on the replay before the next snap. It was not called in the game. Yet that defensive player gets fined, and the refs get the ref a game the very next week. It's absurd what's going on with the state of NFL officiating, and it's absurd that they are allowed to levy these fines against these players after the fact when their own refs are not calling them during the game. And I don't even know why we're having fines for like random face masks. Like, why are we having fines for some of these things that they are fining the players? It doesn't make any sense to me how they're so ticky-tack with the way that they're levying these fines, and they're not calling them in the game. And the fact that they are getting around and avoiding calling the penalties on the hip drop tackle or the lowering the helmet tackle. And you know what they're doing? This is all a ploy by the NFL because they know that the fans are going to have issues if they're calling hip drop tackles. Oh, because when we talked about the hip drop tackles last year, I was one of the people that was in the minority. And I'm calling a spade here because I'm always going to be truthful about what I see. I wanted the hip drop tackle out of the game. Some people didn't care. A lot of fans would get upset when, oh, this shouldn't be they're going to take away the sport. They're going to ruin the sport if they start calling these hip drop tackles. The NFL is going to be over if they call some hip drop tackles once in a while. And in reality, what's happening is it's screwing up players like Mark Andrews. It's screwed up players like Chris Godwin. It's messing up their careers. You could tackle a guy in a different way. There was no need to tackle Chris Godwin using a hip drop tackle like that. When the team was down big, you could have just wrapped him up and tackled him properly. But the defender decided to hip drop tackle him. Now Chris Godwin's gone. If we want to get these penalties out of the game, then you got to throw the flags on them. And you have to be willing to take that criticism from some of the fans who don't like the fact that these are being called penalties in order to get this out of the game. But the NFL is trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're going to pass the rule to make it look like for people like me who don't like this penalty or who like the penalty, who want this gone from the game, the hip drop tackle, to make me be quiet. But then they're never going to flag these penalties to make all the rest of the people never get an uproar about hip drop tackles. And yet they're going to go after the players and fine them for committing these fouls. And it's the same thing with the lowering crown of the helmet. Pass the rule, make it a penalty. They never call the penalty, and then they'll fine the players. It's ridiculous. And sorry to go on such a rant at the start of the show, but it's annoying. And I don't know that you guys are aware of what's happening behind the scenes. I wanted to make you guys aware. Yes, the fines, Nick, do make the NFL money. They supposedly take these fines and put them towards enhancing the rules in the future and telling more people about the rules and making the game safer and different things like that. Yes, and Brett, you're right, because I did watch that game and I saw the very next play. The replay where there was a face mask on Antonio Gibson that was missed. Brett pointed out correctly that the Patriots fumbled on the very next play after that. So it set up like a 2nd and 11 or something like that after the face mask was missed and he was tackled very quickly, maybe 2nd 9, 2nd 11. And then immediately there was a fumble and the Texans scored. That should have been a 15-yard penalty, clear as day to see, and it should have been the Patriots ball moving down the field instead of ending the game. So it's frustrating. That's what it is to me. Okay, the next topic, Matt, why don't you cue that one up? Okay, I want to talk about the impact of Tua Tagovailoa on the Miami Dolphins offense. And I mentioned this prior to us really seeing the impact. I talked about how the loss of Tua was going to become a big-time problem that was never going to be possible to overcome for the Miami Dolphins. And it was because of a couple of factors. If you guys remember back several shows, maybe it was a month ago, talked about this, how the Miami Dolphins run play action at one of the highest rates in the NFL, and yet Tua is getting rid of the ball at one of the fastest rates in the NFL, and how difficult it is to do that. How can you possibly drop back on a play action, turn your back to the offensive line, swing back around and have one of the fastest releases in the NFL and do it so quickly? And it's important to do it that quickly because their offensive line is terrible. You know, you look at guys like Tom Brady, and I went back and I looked at Tom Brady in his last couple of years in Tampa and how quick his release was because his offensive line was causing problems for him. So he was getting rid of the ball super quick. He had play action at the lowest rate in the NFL. They were not using play action because it was impossible to use that level of play action. And so what Tua brought to the table was something that couldn't be replicated by any other quarterback in the NFL, let alone one of these backups that was being brought in there. And so sure enough, if you look at the odds, and all I have to do, to talk about, to really stamp seal of approval on this point and show that I'm correct is look at the odds at which the lines makers tried to adjust once Tua was injured and left. So the very next game after the Jaguars game and the Bills game, he gets hurt in the Bills game. Week 3, they're playing the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. That line, I think, closed around Miami +4. With the backup quarterback starting there. I think it was Skylar Thompson in this case. They lost 24-3. It wasn't even close. Whatever adjustments they tried to make to that point spread did not come close to reflecting the true the true value of Tua to this offense. Okay, so then you look at the very next week. They're playing the Houston Texans in Miami. Sorry, the Tennessee Titans in Miami. That line is Miami -2.5. The Titans were terrible. They were losing all their games. That line was Miami -2.5. Miami loses that game 31-12. Blow up by almost 20 points. In Miami, they get destroyed. Again, it's impossible to put the proper number, make the proper adjustment for the loss of Tua to this offense. And so now you look at this week's game. The Miami Dolphins are hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you have to erase from your brain what has happened with the Miami Dolphins without Tua. Not only do you not have that quarterback there who's not able to quickly operate the play action and get rid of the ball to compensate for the offensive line, he's not even throwing the ball to Tyreek. He's not even throwing the ball to Waddle. They aren't even pushing the ball to those receivers, the backup quarterbacks, that is. So you might as well not even have Tyreek there to do anything. So you're like losing Tyreek as well. You're losing your quarterback plus your number one wide receiver. The way that these are compounding one another is something that the odds makers are not able to fully put into the point spread. When you think about what the Dolphins were the first couple weeks of the season, right? They go out and they barely beat the Jaguars. We know the Jaguars aren't great. They lose to the Buffalo Bills. Those are the only 2 games that Tua played. He didn't play that whole second game, obviously, against the Bills. We don't really have a clear picture of what these Dolphins are. Safe to say maybe that they were slightly more disappointing than what we expected out of them entering the season. But then you think about what the Arizona Cardinals are. And I probably would argue that the Arizona Cardinals are worse, particularly on offense, than what I was expecting heading into this season. Year 2 with Drew Petzing, a fully healthy Kyler Murray, and what we were going to get with Marvin Harrison integrated into this offense. This passing attack is very minimal. They're getting so much done out of the run game. The run game is extremely creative with the way that Petzing is using James Conner, but they aren't really getting much out of that passing game at all. I think the defense is about what I was expecting entering the season. So I don't have like a high expectation about this Arizona Cardinals team. Do you know what this line was? If I grab my 2024 football preview here, if you guys have this, you can get this at Amazon, by the way. These are all the lines from the summer, right? So flip to the Arizona Cardinals chapter here. I don't know if you can see this. This summer, where are we at here? The Arizona Cardinals at Miami. What do we need to do here? Right there. Catching 6 points. They were a 6-point underdog here. Now, I would say that the Miami Dolphins, only a slight bit drop off from what I was expecting maybe entering the season. We'll see what Tua brings to the table here. Maybe Tua's not perfect in this first game back. I wouldn't expect him to be. The Arizona Cardinals are down a little bit. The Arizona Cardinals are off of a big upset win on a short week, traveling on the road. I just think that this number is short. Right now, the Miami Dolphins are laying 4 points. It was 6 in the summer. A little bit down on the Dolphins, but just the same. And plus the bad travel spot, traveling east on short rest for a 1 o'clock game in the sun in Miami. I think that's tough. So I'm super excited for Tua to be back. I cannot wait to watch Tua. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. There are going to be some issues potentially with some timing. I think they're going to be able to compensate for that through the run game, through the short pass game underneath to A-Chain in the pass game. But I'm excited to watch this game. Okay, it looks like we got Ryan. I was slightly filibustering because I didn't know we were having some internet issues. But let's bring our college football analyst on, Ryan McCrystal. Now, I had a rough week last week on the show. I had a winning week with our clients from a betting perspective. But on this particular show, when you aren't clients, I had a rough week. Ryan had a rough week. Let's call a spade a spade. That said, Ryan, you're still 13-7. That's 65% on this very show right here with the picks that you've been giving out, which is massive. So we're going to rebound this week. Going to get back on track. And let's jump right into the first game on deck is Texas A&M at home, laying 1 point versus LSU. After losing the season opener versus Notre Dame, the Aggies have won 6 straight and are unbeaten in SEC play. Meanwhile, Ryan, LSU's quarterback Garrett Nussmeier hasn't been sacked in 4 consecutive games and is playing behind a solid offensive line. Welcome to the show. Tell us why we should be backing Texas A&M tomorrow.
Yeah, clearly the game of the week here. Two first place teams in the SEC, surprisingly, a little bit based on the schedule that they've played. But as of right now, this would be your SEC championship game. And I think the winner of this game has a pretty good shot to get there because neither one of them have incredibly difficult schedules from here on out. Total toss-up type of game, though. Really tough to pick a winner in this one. So what I'm going to do is play Texas A&M in the money line. I'll get to a couple of reasons in terms of why I like that in the matchup, but a big reason is just the fact that they're at home. It's a night game. That's a big advantage in these types of environments. Just a couple of weeks ago, we won by using similar logic to take LSU when they were hosting Ole Miss. These night games in some of these SEC stadiums it creates a big home field advantage. And so if it's kind of a toss-up type game, even though I don't necessarily, if this were a neutral site game, I would have a really hard time picking one side or the other. But in a toss-up type game, I'll take the SEC home team in the night game because of the environment. Now, digging in a little bit more into the matchup, when LSU is on offense, one of the areas where I think Texas A&M might have an advantage is with their pass rush. Now, you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier has done a great job of not taking sacks this year. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. He does get the ball out quickly, but he's been under pressure a pretty decent amount. Based on opponent-adjusted data, LSU only ranks 63rd in pressure rate allowed. Texas A&M's defense, the flip side of that, they rank 26th in pressure rate generated. They've got some beasts on that defensive line. They're going to be able to get pressure on Nussmeier. Now, as we said, Nussmeier avoids sacks. He gets the ball out quickly, but he's still a young quarterback. The decision-making is not necessarily there. He's made some poor decisions this year. 6 interceptions on the season. In his 6 games against FBS opponents, 4 of them have featured at least 1 interception. So he is making mistakes. If a pass rush like Texas A&M can consistently get to him, I think he's going to make a mistake at some point in this game, which in a tight game like this, it could be what swings momentum towards Texas A&M. Now, looking at the other side of the ball, when Texas A&M is on offense, there's a couple areas where I like them to have an edge here against LSU. Number one, I think they can run the ball. LSU's run defense has improved a lot if you sort of look at the raw numbers, but digging into this specific matchup, don't think it's a good matchup for LSU. LSU has improved the run by stacking the box a lot this year. They're just trying to make it hard, almost enticing people to throw the ball on them. They stack the box 59% of the time. Average in college football is 49%. So that will limit rushing yards in the big picture. A stacked box is always going to give up fewer rushing yards than a light box in the big picture. But in this particular matchup, Texas A&M is a power running type of offense. They will let you stack the box with their formations. They will show those formations to allow you to do that. So they face it a lot. They're used to it. And their running back, Le'Veon Moss, has been fantastic in those situations. He's a power between the tackles type of runner. 66% of Moss's carries this year are into a stacked box. So he is used to what the looks that LSU is going to throw at him. On those stacked box attempts, he's averaging 6.1 yards per carry, 3.8 yards after contact per carry. So he has been incredibly effective in these types of situations that LSU is going to try to throw at him. So I think A&M is able to run the ball. They like to play a little bit slower. They're going to try to control the game in that way, and I think they should be able to do so. Now, as for the passing game, even though that's not the focal point of Texas A&M's offense, I think they're going to have success against this LSU defense because of a questionable secondary. And we saw this just a couple of weeks ago when they dominated Missouri in a not a huge upset, but a shocking in terms of how that game played out and the way that they were able to dominate that game. And what they did in the passing game was they attacked underneath a lot of short, quick passes to sort of counter the fact that Missouri has a good pass rush, which LSU also has a strong pass rush. And so to counter that, they're going to do these short, quick passes and make the secondary make plays, which LSU is not very good at. On those 5 or fewer yards downfield, LSU ranks 102nd in yards after catch per reception. So these are 2 things that we've kind of already seen Texas A&M do. They've already run to a stacked box successfully. They've already attacked good pass rushes by doing short, quick passes and making the secondary beat you. And so we've seen them have success against this type of defense, and in fact, a better version of this type of defense in Missouri. So I think that even though I expect this to be a really tight game, there are a few areas where Texas A&M has the edge, factoring the fact that it's at home in a tough night environment. I'll play A&M on the money line.
All right, so now we've got AM on the money line, and now we've got Notre Dame versus Navy at a neutral site. And, I've had a lot of fun, Ryan, betting on Navy, betting some of the overs. These service academies are a great story for 2024. I've enjoyed playing them and kind of rooting for them to finish something off this season and have a storybook ending. It's always a lot of fun, but I am a little bit nervous here. Navy, yes, they're averaging 44.8 points per game. That's the 4th most in the nation. They have yet to face a defense like Notre Dame. Notre Dame has allowed just 11.9 points per game. Why don't you show us why we should fade the Cinderella story, fade that storybook ending, throw it in the garbage, burn it up, and bet on the hated Notre Dame Irish here to not only win, but cover the spread against Navy.
Yeah, I hate to go against a good storyline here, but I think Navy is benefiting from a kind of a cupcake schedule so far, and I think Notre Dame may pull the curtain back on that a little bit. So I'll lay the 13.5 points and take Notre Dame here. There's a number of different reasons for this. One of them is that the service academies, due to their unique offense, obviously they all kind of rely on a triple option to some degree. If you haven't played that recently, that can really throw defensive off. I mean, these are, for the most part, 18 to 22-year-old kids. If they're facing an offensive scheme that they've never seen before, that can create a lot of chaos, even if it's an otherwise strong defense. Now, Notre Dame faces them every year. They've seen this before. They faced it just last season. And so I don't think that advantage that Navy often has is really a big factor when they play Notre Dame. Now, Navy is using a different offense, which is why I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Navy's offense, which, normally we're talking about triple option, which they still use, but they've modernized it a little bit over the past 2 seasons. One of the big things that they've changed is they throw the ball now, which we never used to see Navy do. In fact, based on pass rate over expected data, looking at situations and how likely a team is to throw, this year, Navy's pass rate is 16% below expected. They're still Navy. They're still a run-heavy team. They still use the triple option. But 2 years ago, in the final year of the Ken Niumatalolo era, their pass rate was 35% below expected. So they've drastically shifted towards using the pass more often right now. They're also using the triple option a little bit less. It's still a big part of the offense. They're using it 28% of their rush attempts have been from the triple option. But again, in the final year of the Ken Niumatalolo era in 2022, it was 41% of their rushing plays. So they're starting to become a little more traditional in some areas. They're using a lot more pre-snap motion, though, using some other type of option plays, using some end arounds and whatnot. They're still trying to be creative, sort of level the playing field that way. Now, that is creating a lot of chaos because, like I said, Navy has always been a unique offense when they were running the triple option. But you could go back to past years, watch tape, kind of figure it out, and try to prepare your team for it. Now they've really modernized it a little bit. Sort of it's a passing triple option offense now, which kind of nobody else does really. And so it's become even harder to prepare for. But I think a team like Notre Dame, because of the huge talent gap, is uniquely built to stop this. One of the other changes that they've made is they're only playing with one wide receiver on the field at almost all times. They're increasing their pass rate by using a lot of pre-snap motioning, having tight ends and running backs sometimes motion out into a wide receiver position, but there's only one true receiver on the field at almost all times. That can throw you off if you are struggling with how to line up your personnel against them when not really knowing what their ultimate formation is going to be after all the pre-snap motion. But Notre Dame, the talent gap is massive. They can go out there with linebackers and safeties and know that even if some running back rotates out and they've got a linebacker on him lined up wide, Notre Dame's linebackers can run with Navy's running backs. That's not an issue for Notre Dame. There's a huge athletic gap. So I think this might be a situation where the athletic gap is too big and the Navy loses that advantage that they've had over other teams. Now, it's just a theory because, as you said, they haven't played any defense at all this year. They have not played a defense ranked in the top 50 of total defense, whereas Notre Dame ranks 10th. The only semi-decent defense they faced was Memphis, but they still rank 51st in total defense. So it's not a great Memphis defense that they were going up against. Now, when Notre Dame has the ball on offense, this is another really big factor here why I think they can cover the spread, because I think they're going to march up and down the field on this Navy defense, which has been struggling at times this year, specifically against the run. Now, Navy uses a 3-4 formation. They're one of the few college teams consistently using 7 linemen and linebackers in the box. We see a lot of 2-4, 3-3 fronts in college football these days. So they are doing that to try to create a lot of early contact, not give up gaping holes. But the problem is they can't tackle. They rank 104th in opponent-adjusted yards after contact. Notre Dame is a physical running team. So they're going up against this defense, which is struggling to bring down guys in the backfield against bad offenses. I think Notre Dame just runs right through them. And as for the passing game, if Notre Dame does decide to use the pass a little bit more, Riley Leonard's not going to get touched. Navy ranks 105th in opponent-adjusted pressure rate. They also rank 111th in downfield completion rate allowed. This is just a flat-out bad Navy defense. It's kind of gone unnoticed because they played the 132nd ranked strength of schedule so far. So they have gotten by with these offensive adjustments, tricking teams, with the defense being able to hold up just enough against these bad opponents. But so for all those reasons, I'm going to lay the points with Notre Dame. I think Navy gets exposed a little bit in this matchup.
Ryan, what do you think about the total in this game real quick? The total is sitting at 50.5, some 51s. It opened as high as 52, has been bet a little bit to the under. You seem to think that Navy is going to have a little bit of trouble scoring, but have a lot of trouble stopping Notre Dame's offense, and Notre Dame's offense should be getting going here. So does Navy do enough on the scoreboard to potentially help send this game over the total? I know you like the side better, but do you have any opinion there?
Yeah, I strongly considered giving out the over as the play here. Digging into a little bit more, I started to become more concerned about Navy's offense, and so that's why I decided to play Notre Dame spread instead. But definitely lean over because I think Notre Dame is going to put up a lot of points. I think they should have some quick drives, which in the past has sometimes been hard against Navy. They've been the type of team that can slow you down just enough to make you also bleed the clock when you're on offense. I don't think this Navy defense is capable of doing that. So as long as Navy's offense puts a little bit on the scoreboard, I think we could hit the over here.
All right, there we go. Well, that's Ryan McCrystal. You can find his articles and his game analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can obviously follow him as well on X. Hopefully you guys do both of those things. Good luck, Ryan. Thanks for joining the show. Before we get into our next guest and talk a little bit more about the NFL with Pam Maldonado, want to first mention a great discount that we've got going for you over at Sharp Football Analysis. In addition, earlier today, I released my largest prop of the year in the NFL. Now, I had one other prop that was the same exact unit sizing a couple of weeks ago. We hit that prop with ease. That was one. I'm looking at the strongest props when I think there could be a number that's very mispriced based upon a new role or a new change that has occurred. And so this one, I've identified a change I think is going to really help this particular player. And so it is an over, and I like this one a ton. That's up at Sharp Football Analysis, and you can get these at a massive discount right now if you use coupon code SHOW575, and that's going to get $575 off of our season-long packages over at Sharp Football Analysis. Usually I'm running at my peak late in the season. We'll see this year. Hopefully that continues soon. But last year from week 8 onwards, I went 216, 167. We generated over $5,000 of profit for a $100 better. We're already well ahead of that the first 7 weeks of this season. I've been able to just focus a lot more on pure betting this year, and we've really done well from a betting perspective this year, especially on props. And so we've got a lot more in store for you, and normally things get even better down the road. And so if you are interested in getting on board, use code SHOW575 and you can get $575 off any of our rest of the season betting packages. That's reducing the price down to less than $50 per week. So if you think that's right for you based on how much you bet on games and spending $50 a week to get all of our written analysis on every single game, we do detailed breakdowns of every single game that's played, as well as getting all of our best bets, all of our props, everything that we offer in both college, NFL, as well as sides, totals, and props. That might be something that you're interested in. Okay. Next up, let's pivot over to welcoming in Pam Maldonado, who crushed it on her sides and totals, gave a little back on props. It was the exact reverse of what happened the prior week, Pam. So you're going to get back on track this week with both things. I'm going to hit my longest props that are going to be coming up soon. Ryan's going to hit his 2 college bets. You're going to hit these as well. This time you're going to be talking about the Saints and the Chargers, and you're taking the Saints +7 here. The Chargers are that low variance opponent who gives you exactly what you're expecting. You simply have to execute against them and stop it. On Monday, the Cardinals were able to do that. The Cardinals held the Chargers to only 59 yards rushing, spoiled one of my longest prop bets on J.K. Dobbins' longest rush over. The biggest concern I have on this one, Pam, is this Saints run defense, because they're going to have to step up and do that same thing here. The Saints run defense has allowed 641 rush yards over the last 3 weeks. That's over 200 yards per game. They've missed 24 tackles during that span. Show us why you think the Saints will be able to cover this number on the road on Sunday afternoon.
I have a really good feeling about this week, which means things could go terribly wrong, but I'm hoping for the best. I do love the Saints +7.5 because even if you're giving up yardage, you can still have a chance to cover a touchdown and a hook. In my article, I did mention that the Saints are welcoming back some key players like Taysom Hill, who's just a Swiss Army knife of a player. They're getting back their center in Cesar Ruiz, Pete Werner, and Chris Olave. So this alone is just a far cry from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Spencer Rattler has pretty much been playing a preseason game. We're leaving him out there, figure it out as a rookie, having 0 weapons. Now he's getting a whole bunch of players back, and that alone could change things around offensively and defensively. But looking at the Chargers' offensive inefficiencies, you want to talk about the Saints' run defense. Well, I'm looking at the Chargers' offense, they're struggling, and it's very evident on early down performance, and they have a high rate of third down situations. Looking at their low drop back rate, 52% of drop back rate, that's 29th in the league. Now, the Chargers are showing a predictable tendency to run on early downs. When you have that predictability, that can potentially be exploited by the Saints defense. And it's also led to poor early down performances, averaging only 4.8 yards per play on early downs. That's 29th in the league. So that alone tells me that the Chargers are consistently putting themselves in difficult situations, which has led to a high third down frequency. When you have a league high 58% of the Chargers drives are ending up on third down situations, you're making life so much more difficult for yourself. It's difficult to sustain drives, and you're pretty much asking Justin Herbert to be the savior as often as he can, and he actually has been, which is the paradox of it all. Is the Chargers are converting at the 42% on those third downs. That's seventh best in the league. Something like that is just not sustainable for the long term of it, especially if you're trying to cover as a 7-point spread. So this statistic to me, though, is a little bit misleading when you view it in the context because it's a high frequency of third downs, which means the offense is often in high pressure situations. But even though they have a good cover rate, just the sheer volume of third down situations faced, that likelihood is just going to be a drive killer. So I like it for the Saints covering plus 7.5 because it does help with the Saints defense. If you can focus on stopping the run as best as you can on some of those early downs, continue to force the Chargers into predictable passing situations, well, then that you can capitalize on the Chargers' inefficiency to create more third and long situations. How do you cover more than a touchdown when you have these types of inefficiencies? Limit the Chargers' scoring opportunities, increase the probability of forced punts, turnovers, or a turnover on downs. Now, why I do like the Saints plus 7.5, and not just to cover, but to potentially even win this game outright, not only getting their players back, but the Chargers also struggle to build and maintain some of that momentum. You cannot build a lead if you have these inefficiencies in your playbook. The Saints defense, if they can do their best at containing the run, keep this game close, forcing punts, even if the Chargers lead, their offensive struggles could allow the Saints to stay within the 7.5 points because the fourth quarter is where it might be ugly for the first 3 quarters, but then I'm holding on to hope that the fourth quarter is where we see the Saints really come in and take charge because the Chargers have been outscored 43-10 in the fourth quarter of games in their last 4. They were even shut out in 3 of those 4 quarters. There's a thing now. I mean, you see it all over social media. It's Chargers chargering, and it's a phenomenon that has plagued them in multiple seasons. It's continuing on for 2024. So even if the Chargers do come off with the lead, it's very difficult to pull away, giving some of these inefficiencies. It gives the Saints a solid chance to cover or even win this game outright if the Chargers end up in a fourth quarter deficit like they have been for the last few weeks. I think you're muted.
There we go. Thank you, Pam. I'm looking forward to seeing maybe if we get that complementary piece there with Chris Olave. We heard Spencer Rattler talk so much about Chris Olave and excited to see what might come about there. Next game up, you've got another interesting one for us. We're going to be talking about the Patriots versus the Jets. And in this one, you've got props and you've got a side. The first time around, this is a repeat matchup, obviously division rivals in the AFC. We had Jacoby Brissett behind center for the Patriots. Now we have Drake May and Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo calling out his Patriots squad publicly for being too soft. We'll see how that ends up working out for their head coach over there. The Jets obviously added Devontae Adams at wide receiver. Hassan Reddick, I don't know how many reps he's going to get in this game, but he's now back in the building, and some of their other defensive players at cornerback are healthier. Show us why you think we should take those valuable points with the New England Patriots and look towards Hunter Henry's receiving props. As you might know, Hunter Henry was with Coach Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly was on our Tuesday show. He's the reason that Hunter Henry was signed by the New England Patriots. So you're liking Hunter Henry to have a great game this weekend against the New York Jets. Talk to us a little bit about this one.
This is a hold your nose type of play, but I do like the Patriots, and it's also in the same boat, not to cover just the full +7 touchdown at home, but to also potentially win this game outright. The Jets are having a lot of problems both offensively and more surprisingly defensively. But looking at the Jets rushing inefficiencies, the fact that 23% of the Jets rushes have failed to gain yardage, that's the highest rate in the league. That's exposed as a significant weakness that the Patriots could potentially exploit. Now, this inefficiency puts the Jets, also similar to the Chargers, in difficult down and distance situations more frequently. And now you're asking Aaron Rodgers, who is kind of a shell of himself at this point. So you're giving me an opportunity to fade a quarterback that has glimpses of his old self, but then also you see what he's doing on some plays. And I'm like, are you still stuck in ayahuasca land? Because I don't know what he's doing. And I'm not sure he knows what he's doing. And you see it in his interviews. There's just like not a lot of cohesiveness with his wide receiver room right now. So you're asking him to be put into these difficult situations and make plays. So it's going to force the Jets to rely more heavily on their passing game. You become a lot more one-dimensional. We've seen Aaron Rodgers throw some interceptions, and the Patriots defense could potentially, now that they have Drake May behind center, have a lot more confidence to string together a good defensive performance. Focus on stopping the pass if they know that the Jets' run game is struggling. And it leads me to liking it gives me hope seeing Drake May behind center for the Patriots. I know they're one of the worst teams in the league with one of the worst records, but Drake May gives them a glimpse into what the future could look like. If you look at the comparison between May and Jacoby Brissett, you mentioned his name, the performances are a clear improvement from what we've seen for the Patriots' offensive capabilities. He has big play potential because under May, nearly 20% of his plays have gained 10 plus yards. That's 18th in the league. Under Brissett, 31st in the league. Explosive playability under May, 6% of his plays gained 20 plus yards, also 18th in the league. And under Brissett, under 3% of those plays were gaining 20 plus yards. That was last in the league. That alone, you're telling me he's average. That's all he is. Right now, he's average, which is such a step up from what Jacoby Brissett was able to provide. Now, that improvement alone gives me the belief that the Patriots offense is a lot more capable having May behind center. You can move the chains more consistently. They're going for the deep ball a lot more. That can surprise defenses. There's an increased play of some of those big plays. That alone could change the momentum. So the offense is becoming a lot less predictable having Drake May because he's also such a mobile quarterback. He can move out of the pocket. He can make passes on the run. So it could potentially pose a threat, become more challenging for the Jets defense to contain, who has had struggles here in the last few weeks. Now, why I like the Patriots +7 and to potentially win this game outright is because of the defensive advantage. The Patriots can capitalize on some of that Jets' poor rushing efficiency, potentially creating some of those turnovers, favorable field position, the offensive improvements from May at quarterback, and the Patriots have a better chance at sustaining drives, scoring opportunities, that big play threat of 10 and 20 plus yards, and game flow. I'm just not a big believer right now in what the Jets have to provide. And it seems like the more weapons that they get with Devontae Adams, the less efficient they become. Now, I do like Hunter Henry for his player props, over 33.5 receiving yards, and his longest reception over 16.5, because Henry's latest game, it was pretty good. He had 8 receptions, 9 targets, 92 yards. His current form, and more so importantly, he has built a connection with May. I like to look for that receiver quarterback connection through multiple teams because those are the players that I like to target most. Consistency, he's achieved, if you're a fantasy person, he has achieved tight end 1 status in Drake May's 2 starts. So he is becoming a reliable, productive. You see that relationship growing between these two players. And his target share alone has increased. He has nearly 20% target share under May. Henry is the second most targeted receiver on the team. This high volume of opportunities alone increases his chances of surpassing this mark. And if you look at the Jets' defense against tight ends, they're pretty average, allowing 7.5 yards per target, 16th in the league, and 75% catch rate, that's 18th in the league. So while the Jets aren't particularly vulnerable to tight ends, they're also not shutting them down. And we've seen the Jets against tight ends in the last few weeks. Susceptibility. There is something there. Several tight ends have exceeded this number by margin. We have Kincaid, Freiermuth, Kittle, Munt. So given Henry's connection that he's now starting to build with May as a trusting, reliable target, the Jets' average defense against tight ends over 33.5 is the look that I like. Over 16.5 for his longest reception. I was thinking of a ladder, but it's still the Jets. It's still the Patriots. And so I'm going to be really conservative and go for his base. But potentially he could have a massive 100-yard game. just because of the trust and reliability that May has with him right now.
Yeah, that's something to be said. A quarterback with the security blanket, in this case, obviously Hunter Henry. We have Marcos there saying that this prop has been hitting for him when he's been betting it in 2 of the last 3 weeks. And we also have him suggesting that the Jets play next Thursday. So slight look ahead potentially, or taking their foot off the gas a little bit too early is possible in those situations. Excellent work, Pam. Thank you so much. I think you're going to rebound this week. I think I am. I think Ryan is as well. We're going to have a great week for you guys on the show. Reminder, you guys can follow Pam on X. Make sure you are doing that. Make sure that you check out her articles and analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com as well. Another reminder, make sure that you guys go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Sharp Football Analysis YouTube channel, where we've got great content all the time over there. Almost like 3-4 live shows a week. I want to say 4, I believe. We also post other clips and segments. And so you guys are going to learn a lot from us over at the Sharp Football Analysis YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you give this particular show a thumbs up to help the algorithm out a little bit here. Okay, so before we get into the longest prop bets from myself in the NFL, I want to talk a little bit about the referees. I think we've got Joe ready, who is our referee expert. We're going to bring Joe on. Keep in mind, guys, if you've got some questions, I'll try to get to your questions momentarily as well. So feel free over on YouTube to pop some questions in there about week 8, and we'll try to hit on those as well. But with Joe, we want to talk a little bit first about what we just saw, of course, on Thursday Night Football. We already discussed the ending to that game. I showed a replay of the game on the non-face mask call. Why don't you share your opinion on that call, the lack of being able to get these types of calls correct in the moment, and some of your potential frustrations?
Well, the call was bad, so we all agree on that one. We've discussed this before, and I mentioned, and you're in good company here, because Bill Belichick has suggested on a number of occasions that they need to have like a replay/challenge system for penalties of that nature. It hasn't happened yet, and I just don't think it's going to. I think the league, look, they like the controversy because people are still talking about it today. It was really the talking point after the game. So the league integrity of the game is secondary to publicity and controversy, which ties in together. I don't think they're going to do anything. And then if you do have a challenge system for penalties, which ones are you challenging? Because a lot of these are subjective. Now, the face mask one is obviously black and white, like it's pretty obvious. But can you challenge roughing the passer? Can you challenge pass interference and that sort of thing? I mean, it's where does it start? Where does it stop? Are you just doing it for one particular penalty, or is it going to be horse collar? Is it going to be just face mask? That's kind of the issue, I think. And I don't think the NFL wants the scrutiny. I think they kind of like this setup. And like I said, any publicity is good publicity.
Well, the one thing that I'm thinking here, Joe, is that especially on these egregious ones that happen, and we've seen it now multiple times on these primetime games where there's a penalty, there's a clear penalty, and there's enough time for the TV production crew to pull the highlight, replay it before the next ball is snapped, that we don't have some sort of eye in the sky, much like they do in college where they are reviewing some of the helmet-to-helmet hits that are out there with the targeting penalties. Just come in and quickly say, we need to review this penalty really quick. Yep. And I love it when they come in and they change. I saw it last week and I tweeted it out. I'll give the officials credit when it's due, where they reversed a call where the guy was short. They quickly, within 15 seconds, like they saw the replay upstairs, they reversed it, said it's a first down, and they moved the game along. That's the key. We need to move the speed of the game along. Don't send the ref back to the hood to look at the film. Just have the eye in the sky after we clearly see that there's a penalty that was called incorrectly or missed. Just get it right before that next ball is snapped. Now, if the next ball is snapped, then there's nothing you could do about it, right? But if the next ball has not yet been snapped, maybe there's a way. So it's not actually a challenge system. It's just the eye in the sky can look at some of the things that are being shown on replay to determine if something was right or wrong really quickly. Could be a terrible idea. Haven't thought about it more than just a second talking to you here. But I want to talk now about Adrian Hill. Adrian Hill is the referee for this game where you've got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is a divisional rivalry game but there's a little bit more spice to this game as well this year, Joe. And that's because we obviously have a lot of history here with the Raiders and the Chiefs. The Raiders go and upset the Chiefs last year on Christmas Day. You're going to tell us a little bit more about that. They're celebrating, they're smoking their cigars. They say that they've come up with a game plan to figure out a way to beat Patrick Mahomes. And then in the offseason, Antonio Pierce comes out with this clip. Why don't you go ahead and roll that, Matt? Nothing the NFL does is coincidental. Everything is extremely well planned out. So listen to this. This past offseason, when Antonio Pierce went on that podcast and said that he wanted his Raiders defense to rough up Patrick Mahomes and play him like the Detroit Pistons used to play Michael Jordan.
You got the Jordan rules, and I'm calling now from now on, as long as I'm here, the Patrick Mahomes rules. So you remember when Jordan was going through it with the Pistons, all those guys in the 80s before he came Michael Jordan, Air Jordan, the Pistons used to whoop his. Anytime he came to the hole, elbows, feeling them, love taps. We touched them. We in the head, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm touching you.
This game was circled by the NFL, and you know what their reaction was? It was to put Adrian Hill as referee on this game when the time came. You know what Adrian Hill leads the NFL in? Roughing the passer penalties. Yep, he's number one. He's also number one in neutral zone penalties on the pass rush. He's also number 2 in overall defensive penalties. I know Pierce wants to rough up Patrick Mahomes, but it's going to be fun to see what Adrian Hill lets him get away with. There you go, Joe. That kind of sets the table for you. Those were the quotes that we saw out of the Raiders head coach this past offseason, basically outlining what his plan is to, kind of go after and disrupt the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Break this one down for us and what we should expect a little bit here out of this referee.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's a rivalry game. I have to do the obligatory Taylor Swift reference. So there's a lot of bad blood between these two in recent times.
I like that, Joe. That's good. That is good, Joe.
Yeah, you got to. That's part of the contract here. We're going to mention Taylor Swift when it comes to the Chiefs, but yeah. So the Hill crew, like you mentioned, lead the league roughing the passer. Those little penalties, neutral zone infractions, defensive offsides. They kind of pay attention to that, so the Raiders aren't going to pin their ears back. There's a few things here. If Pierce has this game plan, this blueprint to beat Patrick Mahomes, okay, it's a one-game sample size that this has worked. If you had that, why the hell are you telling everybody that you have it? Like, think about Bill Belichick. Let's just say Bill Belichick had the Peyton Manning rules. Let's just say they did back in, 2010. You think Belichick's going to go on some podcast and be like, I've got the Peyton Manning rules. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to take him out of his game? He's going to keep it in-house. So it just shows how stupid a coach Pierce is and just how bad an organization the Raiders are, that you have your head coach out there touting this supposed game plan to beat the best player in the league. So that's the first thing. Second thing, it is a good strategy if it was 1978 or something like that, where you could get away with this type of thing. But to come out publicly in this era, not 2024, and say, we're going to do this, we're going to take him out of his game with a couple of late hits, like, you got to be a moron. So those are the first two things. As you pointed out, the Hill crew leads the league in roughing the passer penalties. Second overall as far as overall defensive penalties called, but I narrowed it down to the defensive line and linebackers, and they ranked second overall in penalties per game on those two positional groups. And that's really where, that's where the stuff's going to happen as far as trying to get pressure on Mahomes and maybe trying to rough him up a little bit. So, look, it's a mismatch. This is a home away from home for Kansas City. When they go to Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium, they've played there 5 times, 4 times against the Raiders, obviously. And then once last year in the Super Bowl. So that's 5 times. And the Raiders, each time they've played there, they're a minus 7.5 point favorite on average, and they win by an average of about 15 points. So they're clearly the better team. The biggest issue for the Chiefs is motivation in these types of games. Like the primetime games they get up for, but it's these Sunday afternoon games. They kind of go through the motions and sleepwalk it, and they just pull it out late. I think motivation won't be an issue this week because of what Pierce said. And also, some of the Raiders players were ridiculing Mahomes in the offseason. So I think the Chiefs have this game circled, and they'll go out and make a statement against the Raiders. I don't know what the final score is going to be, but it's going to be a double-digit win. It'll be 65% Chiefs fans there. It always is. They take over the stadium. The Raiders have no real home field advantage at all. So I like the Chiefs, and I think Hill is put on there for a reason. The NFL didn't do this by accident. And if you remember, the last time Hill officiated the game, 2 weeks ago, Monday Night Football, the Bills and the Jets, and we saw a couple of ridiculous roughing the passer penalties in that. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see something here where if the Raiders get anywhere near Mahomes, there you see a flag. So I like the Chiefs in this one a lot.
Yeah, actually, somebody did come out in my mentions and ask if this was the same ref from that game, the Jets versus the Bills, where there were just some really ridiculous kind of, and that was when Aaron Rodgers even came out after the fact and said, like, guys, I appreciate it, but we don't need to be calling these types of plays as roughing the passer, because some of those were pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if Antonio Pierce has this strategy, which he claims he does, this is the last crew you want to be assigned to your game. So, like you said, the NFL doesn't do anything by accident. This crew's been assigned to this game for a reason. And I think the reason is to send a message, hey, this is not going to be tolerated. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of roughing the passer penalties early on in the piece, just to sort of set the tone.
Yeah, that's what I'm that's part of this game. This is the narrative of this game that I'm enjoying watching it for. And I will just add this, some people, when I ever mention anything about refs online now, some people get up in arms about it, thinking that we're necessarily saying that the games are fixed. And I just want people to be clear, like, at least from my perspective, the refs, and Joe, you've taught me this, so I'm going to let you talk to it as well before we move on and get some of our bets in. The refs are the third team out on the field. And if you're really serious about this, and there is something, not all the ref crews have tendencies, not all the ref crews have something that they bring differently to the game. But when there is something unique and different about that third team that's out on the field, which are the refs, and they have certain tendencies, you'd be foolish not to at least consider them in how you're handicapping the game. I never personally make it be my end-all, be-all handicap. I'm not going to say the games are being fixed by the refs. I don't actually believe in that. But I do think that these guys call things a certain way, see things a certain way, and the league knows some of the tendencies of these refs. And in this particular case, they have stuck Adrian Hill on here. I thought it was silly that Antonio Pierce mentioned that in the offseason. I think the league probably said something to him, and the league wants to make sure that no other coaches are running around town talking about things like this publicly, about how they're going to hit players after the whistle, run up to them, all these different types of commentary. So I think that that's going to be very fascinating. Joe, any feedback on that comment?
Yeah, I mean, what you said is pretty much right on, and I've always emphasized that the refs aren't the be-all, end-all. I just look at it as a part of the game when I assess a game, particularly in the trenches. I look at offensive holding, false starts. I look at how they assess the game in the trenches, because that's really where the game is won and lost, no matter who the two teams are. So I always look at that first, is offensive holding, false starts, and then what sort of penalty do they call on the defensive line, linebackers, because that little area right there in the middle of the field, that's where the game's won and lost. So they just all look at it differently. You and me could be officiating games, and your crew officiates us differently than my crew. And that's just the way it is. You got 17 different crews, and so you have 17 different ways of assessing the game. And I just try and put it all together and give you an idea as to how they're going to call any particular game.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, make sure that you guys are following Joe Gibbs on X, and make sure that you guys are reading his article. He comes up with an article at the end of every single week. It's earlier in the week where he updates all the different referee assignments. So if you want to get an early head start on when the league announces which refs are going to be on the games, usually it's changed a little bit this year, Joe, but I think lately it's been Tuesday evening.
They're putting them out
with these.
They're putting them out later and later. They used to do it Tuesday afternoons around noon West Coast time. Now they're waiting till like 7:30 on Tuesday nights West Coast time. Yeah.
So they're coming out with it later, but we do update the article showing you guys which referees have been assigned to which games, if you're interested in that. So that's up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. And then, of course, Joe comes back later in the week with some of his interesting analysis, looking at different trends and tendencies for a couple of the games in particular that are of note. So thank you very much, Joe, for joining us. Good luck this weekend in all your bets. And with that being said, I do want to mention, guys, make sure that you get any questions that you want in. I'm going to be going ahead and sharing a couple of bets with my subscribers, if you're a subscriber over at Sharp Football Analysis. And then we're going to get into a couple of these just so that you guys know we always are delivering the bets that we're making here on this show are bets that I'm giving to my clients. They're bets that I'm making myself. But to clients, we have way more action than this. We're like 20 props a week, give or take. And those have been doing really well. So I don't feel bad about giving you guys several of them each week. And just know these are like good bets that we're also giving to the subscribers as well. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and queue up one of the bets. This is the longest reward segment. What that means is you guys stuck around here. We just hit 1 p.m. If you're in a central time zone, I guess now you're getting ready to eat your lunch. But for the rest of us, we're enjoying the fall weather out there, and we're heading into some prop talk. I like to hit the longest props here. I love this marketplace. Longest reception, longest rush, longest completion. I think it's a lot of fun to tackle. I think there are edges to be had in this marketplace. And with that said, let's dive into one of them in particular that I like the most this week. And that is, it's going to be, there you go, Marcos. Before we get into this, 131 viewers live on YouTube, 11 likes. You guys need to get in there and hit that like button. You want these props? Go and hit that like button. We'll get into them in 1 second. Go hit that like button for Marcus. Thanks for the reminder. Appreciate you. If you are at ESPN, that has the best number on this game. Bet365 and MGM also decent, but ESPN has the best number. So log into ESPN is the preferred app if you guys have access to that. Otherwise, Bet365 or MGM. I will still bet this at DK. I will still bet this elsewhere, but I'm just saying those are the preferred from a numbers perspective. Go to the Philadelphia Eagles Cincinnati Bengals game. And when you're at the Philadelphia Cincinnati Bengals game, why don't you go to rushing props? When you're in rushing props for the Philadelphia Eagles Cincinnati Bengals game, I want you to go to the longest rush. And under the longest rush for the Philadelphia Eagles Cincinnati Bengals game, I want you to find Chase Brown. And we're going to go over 14.5 even money at ESPN Bet. Over 14.5 minus 105 at MGM or at Bet365. So let you get that in. All right, so while you're getting that in, and I'm spilling water on myself, let's talk a little bit about that prop and why I like it. So Chase Brown has gone for a longest rush of 16 plus. That's why I think 15.5 minus 105 at DK, totally fine. I like it there as well. He's gone for a longest rush of 16 plus in 5 straight games. So 5 straight games for Chase Brown. And consider the opposition of who he's gone up against. It's the Ravens, the Giants, and the Browns defenses. 16 plus in 5 straight games. And the Ravens have the best run defense, especially against explosive runs in the NFL. The Eagles rank 25 against the run. The Eagles are terrible against the run. Out of the bye, the Eagles played the Browns and the Giants rushing attacks. Now, those 2 rushing attacks, in case you don't know, they're not very explosive, right? The Giants, they were dealing with an offensive lineman that was out, Andrew Thomas, their left tackle. They're not a good rushing attack to begin with. Cleveland Browns, they were dealing with some offensive linemen out as well. They're not an elite explosive rushing attack. They were when Nick Chubb was healthy, but they're not in 2024 from an explosive factor. So take those 2 games out. Let's look at all the rest of the games that the Philadelphia Eagles played. They had a bye, so there's 4 other games. They played 4 other offenses. Every single running back with at least 2 rushing attempts had a longest rush of at least 15 plus yards against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. I will say that again because it sounds hard to believe, because there's 7 of these guys. Every single running back with at least 2 rushing attempts had a longest run of at least 15 yards. So let me go through them. Week 1, Josh Jacobs had 16 attempts, a long of 32. Week 1 also, Emmanuel Wilson, only 4 attempts, but had a long of 18. Week 2, Tyler Algier, only 9 attempts, had a long of 15. Bijan Robinson, 14 attempts, a long of 19. Alvin Kamara, he was the workhorse, 26 attempts in that game versus Saints. He had a long of 16. In week 4, Rashad White and Bucky Irving. Bucky was getting worked in. Rashad was still the workhorse, but both of them only had 10 rushing attempts in that game. Both of them had rushing attempts of 15 and 17 yards, went over this longest rush of 14.5. So something Chase has been hitting regularly. It's a bad run defense of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think there's going to be opportunities there for Chase Brown. And now we're going to go to the last one. And this is, let's see. It's a Monday night game, so you can navigate to the Giants at Pittsburgh. We are looking at best numbers still, probably bet 365. They have the best number here, but a lot of these books have the same number. Juice varies a little bit. Your Caesars has it, your MGM has it, your Pinnacle has it. ESPN Bet is one that I would not go to here. So pretty much anywhere other than ESPN, you can find this one. FanDuel and DK, they don't have longest reception props up for Monday Night Football yet. So I apologize, but I've got several others that I'm looking at. I just got to put in more work this afternoon. I'll be spending hours back at my desk here working through these this afternoon, but we're going to go with a longest reception in the Monday night game on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go to receiving props, go to longest reception, go to George Pickens over 23.5. George Pickens over 23.5 longest reception. You can get it for minus 115 at Bet365. Other spots, the juice is a little bit higher than that, but that's where you're going to find it there. And this one is just quite simple. This is not one that has a long history. There's not a lot to read off of this because this is a unique situation and role. This is a change up here for the Pittsburgh Steelers and George Pickens. They now have Russell Wilson as quarterback, and he's a totally different quarterback, and they are trying totally different objectives with George Pickens than they were when Justin Fields was the quarterback. This team is now throwing the ball deeper down the field. You've got Russell Wilson as part of what Arthur Smith likes to do. If you guys know what Arthur Smith was doing down in Atlanta, it was a lot of running the football and deep shots on passing. They did not have a very intermediate game. That's why a lot of people got very frustrated at the lack of Kyle Pitts usage, for example, because they were not trying to throw the football very much to the intermediate area. It was a lot of short, like behind the line of scrimmage passes and runs, or it was a lot of deep stuff. And that's actually what Russell Wilson sort of majored in when he was out in Denver. With Denver and Sean Payton, remember my guys over at Sharp Football Analysis, Rich Rebar, Ray Summerlin, coined the term the James Harden offense. This is the way the basketball analytics took over and changed the sport, the NBA, to everything becoming layups, dunks, or threes, right? There was no real mid-range game. And that's exactly the way that Russell Wilson was operating that offense in Denver. It was underneath stuff to running backs, short screen passes, runs to the running backs, and then deeper shots over the top to Cortland Sutton, etc. I think we're going to see plenty of targets of the deep variety to George Pickens, jump balls. And, you know, George Pickens, I played the tape on Tuesday, like 2 weeks ago, when Justin Fields was the quarterback, and George Pickens was just jogging about as fast as you or I could do on a lot of his routes, didn't seem engaged, didn't seem to care very much about these types of plays, didn't have a lot of want to out on the field, and they were reducing his route volume. They were having him run fewer routes. They were bringing him off the field more, and Mike Tomlin gave some very weird answers to the questions as to why they were using George Pickens less frequently. This was in the game against the Dallas Cowboys. I believe that was on Monday Night Football or Sunday night. There's a lot of controversy about that. As it turns out, like, he wasn't getting these targets. He wasn't being targeted. And all these wide receivers, like it or not, they're divas. And they want to get the ball. And when they're not getting the ball and they don't know their role in this offense, they don't understand what the objectives are of the offense, where they don't buy into them, they don't agree with them, they don't like it. And so they don't give as much effort. And they might say things. And now all of a sudden you got George Pickens and Russell Wilson on the bench, high-fiving. George Pickens is cheesing. Like, everybody is happy over there. Obviously, once they were up big against the Jets, it looked great. I will also add this. Russell Wilson did better than I was expecting him to against the Jets. The Steelers, their center is a third stringer. They had issues and they were going up against a stout pass rush and defensive line of the New York Jets in their last game. I thought Russell Wilson wasn't going to be able to handle that pressure all that well. I didn't have any bets on that game, but I was worried about Russell Wilson being thrown into that particular opponent with that backup center. And it didn't shock me to see that he struggled a little bit the first 3 series of the game, 4 series of the game, what have you. After that, though, they really got going and they really had a lot more success down the field. That's perfectly natural. And I was expecting week 1 quality Russell Wilson the entire game. Think back to what we saw from all these quarterbacks in week 1. Scoring was down. Quarterback play was horrific. Accuracy was bad. Reading defenses was slow. Sacks were up. Target depth was very low. So Russell Wilson to come out with the stats he did in his first action, not even taking all the starters reps in minicamp and preseason, not even taking all the starters reps heading into that game. I thought he played extremely well in that second half. And so we're going to see a lot more efficiency out of Russell Wilson, I think, and just effective play to start this game on Monday night against the New York Giants with a little bit more extra time to prepare. It is a home game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Giants have been an okay pass defense, but I think you give Pickens a chance. I think he's going to pay you back with at least one deep catch. This guy's fingers, he's an alien. He is ridiculous the way that he has that finger control on the ball, the way that he can bring those catches in, catch away from his body, just the way that he can contort himself on the sidelines to get his feet down. It's really incredible to watch. That's one of the gifts that he has. So that's one. I like the Chase Brown better, but I do like the George Pickens as well. Neither of these players are involved with the strongest prop that I have of the week, which is up at Sharp Football Analysis. And it's a prop that I circled a couple of days ago. I absolutely love. I altered this prop to the high heavens. If you guys are subscribers, you know we altered this all the way up to the top of the ladder that we could go. There are a couple other props that I like this week where we are going to be laddering as well. All right, let's get to some of your questions. Michael said that Russ excels with the deep ball to bigs. Matt, you probably already flashed this. Yes, absolutely, he does. Russ excels. Campbell Williams says Russ excels under throwing them, which suits Pickens' contested catch ability, but it nets out as the same. Definitely agree. Absolutely agree with that. McLaurin under yards. Lee says McLaurin under yards going against Jalen Johnson, who travels with wide receiver 1 and Mariota at quarterback. So this one is really interesting to see whether or not we are going to get Marcus Mariota up. They are trying not to say who we're going to get for the Washington Commanders starting quarterback. I'm very down on this because I really wanted to see Jaden Daniels going up against Caleb Williams in this big battle. Being someone who's in the DC area, everybody's talking about this game. Everybody circled it because these are the 2 biggest draft picks. Jaden did practice on Friday. They apparently put him through a lot, and they're trying to see how he responds to it. Quote, I'm reading all these as they come out real time because I follow a lot of people with local news. Jaden Daniels says, quote, it felt good. I do expect to play. I want to play, but it's not my decision. They wouldn't put me in any position they wouldn't feel comfortable for in my future, and I wouldn't want them to put me in that predicament either. So I'm going to go back and watch a lot of the quotes. A lot of times I watch how the players are saying things. I watch how the coaches are saying things. Written quote is good. Seeing the actual video is even better. So I want to get a better sense as to whether or not we see him out there. I don't know if you guys have any opinion. What's your guess? Do you guys think that we're going to see Jaden Daniels out there? The other thing that I saw, and maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong in the chat over on YouTube. On that run, it was the very first play of the game. Jaden Daniels was out ahead of the defenders, but sort of was starting to slow down, and the defenders were catching up to him. It felt like he was like sort of almost like sliding to an extent, like he was trying to slide down, which is not really what you do like when somebody's about to tackle you in your back, and it put him in that precarious position. And it was a little bit maybe running through his mind, at least what I was seeing, of Dan Quinn telling him, you got to get down, you got to protect your body, you got to help yourself. And he tried to do a little bit of that too late, and it was what ended up costing him. And so might have been thinking too much at the end of that play. Should have just tried to run out of bounds or just fall to the ground, as opposed to try to slide while guys are right behind you tackling you, because there's a big difference when you're running towards somebody and they're running towards you, and then you start to slide. They're seeing your every move, and they have the ability to change their launch angle to try to avoid helmet to helmet or some of the other hits on you. And you've got the advantage, you could slide cleats up into them and different things like that to make them want to jump out of the way. When a guy is running away from you and you're a defender and you're tracking him down, and then he goes to slide, your natural move, you're just seeing his back start to go down. You're diving to tackle him. So it's just not a good position. It's not a good thing to do. Hopefully he never does that again. They took down that alt prop on DK. Okay, so DK's down with the alt prop. Well, I guess we'll see. We will see that prop back up on FanDuel, James. So we will see that back up on FanDuel, and we will be able to attack it there again. And I will definitely be alting it when I see it up there at FanDuel as well. Let's see. Wouldn't count on Jaden. So we got one guy who says he wouldn't count on Jaden. Another guy, Mateo, says he does not expect to see Jaden Daniels to preserve the future. And the division game against the Giants next week seems like getting Daniels to 100%. No need to risk it, and they don't have a real shot at the division. They do have a shot at the division. This game is obviously not in the division, but I would agree if they are playing it a little bit more conservatively, which is what I kind of would assume that they would do here, that we won't see him. But no doubt about it, he's going to be pushing to play. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can sort of reel him back. The A.J. Brown numbers on the worksheet are ridiculous. Yes, Exile Cultivation subscribes, gets Rich Rebar's worksheets, breaks down every single game on that worksheet, talking about the A.J. Brown numbers. A.J. Brown was a good prop winner for us last week for clients, and he's an absolute stud. He's an absolute stud. I'm not sure this Philadelphia Eagles offense, they are not functioning the way that I would expect an offense with this coordinator to function. I think this is way too geared towards what the quarterback wants to do. Sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes you need to kind of push all the buttons and levers that gain a lot of efficiency rather than just what your quarterback is totally comfortable with. And I think Jalen Hurts can do the things that would be more efficient for this offense, but prefers doing it a little bit different way, and they're acquiescing a little bit more to what he prefers to do. One of the key matchups in this game, obviously, is going to be Hendrickson coming off that left edge against the Philadelphia Eagles backup left tackle, who is absolutely terrible. So we're going to have to see how the blind side of Jalen Hurts functions in this one and how much time he has to throw the ball. He tends to take a lot of time, but still throw the ball relatively short. I know some of those big ones to A.J. Brown. That's what we needed last week, and we got it, thankfully. But we need some improvement there from Jalen Hurts, and I think this offense needs to improve a little bit as well. Okay, the alt prop. The alt prop, Ben, that is a subscriber prop that is part of a prop that I released to subscribers earlier today. So, Tom, you're asking about Tua and A-Chain, the receptions over under only 3.5. I think there's a better way to attack that. The concept of there being passes to A-Chain. The other thing is, let's see what's going on with Tyreek. I don't know. Did anybody see if Tyreek is up or not at practice today? Last I saw when I was checking, I did not necessarily see that Tyreek was. I thought I saw that he wasn't there with the team, but I don't know if I can trust that or not. Nick says Hurts doesn't seem to trust the coaching, and the coaching doesn't trust Hurts. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there with that dynamic. Obviously, you have Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator. I was expecting to see a little bit more of the Kellen Moore offense mixed in here in Philadelphia, but we're seeing more of the bring Tua's offense from last year, bring Jalen Hurts' offense from last year forward to this year. And I don't think that that's helping them very much. Okay. I think we got you guys covered here this week. Reminder, if you want to tune back in on Tuesday. We will be live Tuesday at noon Eastern. Go to Sharp Football Analysis on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. Please set your alerts. You want to get a big discount on all of our season-long betting packages, NFL props, college, etc. Use code SHOW575, and you can do that. James is asking about the EDSR edges. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick, and then we'll get out of here. I should know you always ask about this, James. Let me see what we got here. Biggest edges. Well, we got a ton of injuries here, but the San Francisco 49ers are the biggest edge. So you got to factor in some of the injuries, but the Dallas Cowboys offense has a terrible EDSR. They're actually 23rd, 10th worst. In large part because they're trying to run the football with Rico Dowdle and a little bit of Zeke, although they phased him out. We'll see what they do after the bye week. But that's hurting their ability to bypass third downs when they're running the ball on early downs. And then their defense hasn't been great either. Meanwhile, we've got the offense and defense of the San Francisco 49ers had been top 5, but now they're down so many players on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be hard to expect that they're going to be the 5th most efficient EDSR offense. Although the Dallas Cowboys defense, yes, they've played a very difficult schedule. Yes, they have played the Baltimore Ravens, but they are the NFL's worst EDSR defense. So that's boding well for that one, but you have to take into consideration a couple of road teams. You've got 3 different road teams that have pretty decent edges. You've got actually 2. You've got the Baltimore Ravens over Cleveland. No surprise there, but you do have Jameis Winston involved now. You also have the Kansas City Chiefs over the Raiders, the line, and both of those games obviously reflects the fact that we've got some big EDSR edges there. You also have, on a little bit smaller note, who we got here. A touch of Seahawks and a touch of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, of course, Tampa Bay lost both of the cluster injuries at the receiver position. So nothing hot, James, nothing hot for or Jason, nothing hot popping from the EDSR model this week. How do the Eagles scheme around the Malata injury? Yeah, number one, they've got to get rid of the ball faster from Jalen Hurts' hands. Now, we also know that they're without Dallas Goedert. They've got to figure out better ways to get the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker. And to just feel like it's fitting a square peg into a round hole. They don't know how to do that. And he's not comfortable doing it. But they've got to try to figure out a way to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker from him. That's number one. Number two, you cannot be predictable. You can't be predictable when you are attempting to pass the football. That means you have to be efficient on early downs. If you are setting yourselves up in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 situations, 2nd and 10 situations too frequently, the defense knows this is a forward-thinking Eagles coaching staff. They're not going to be running the ball very frequently on 2nd and 10. And certainly everybody passes the ball on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. You've got to avoid the predictable down and distance situations where passes would be called. So the Eagles have to find a way to be very effective and efficient on early downs, on first down. My producer's saying, explain what EDSR is. Okay, so if people don't know, EDSR stands for early down success rate. It's a metric I sort of created probably over a decade ago by this point, which looks at teams' basic ability to bypass third downs. It's not what is your success just on early downs, like what is take out third downs and just look at success rate on 1st and 2nd down. It's basically your ability to convert first downs on early downs, to skip third downs, because it's such a big deal. So that's what early down success rate, EDSR, stands for, and that's what early down success rate is and how it's calculated. Okay, guys, I think we're good. Thanks for you joining. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy that fall weather. We got Halloween coming up next week. Make sure you take time to smell the roses, or in this case, the fall leaves. Get out there, have a little bit of fun. Hope that your bets go well. And if we see you over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, hopefully we're going to be able to deliver yet another winning week for you guys. So good luck, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.